I learned everything. I worked in the plant. I ran a plant. I was the head buyer. I was a feeder cattle buyer during college. I was awful at it, and they decided I needed to find some other job. But yeah, so I've been involved for a long time.
That's a head on. We live it. The Live Ag Podcast. Quality cattle deserve premium prices. Consign to a Live Ag video auction and capitalize on today's strong market demand. Our upcoming auctions are on your screen and available online at live-ag.com. Contact your local rep to get started. Now, here are your hosts, Ty DeCordova and Casey Mabry.
Well, welcome back to the We Live It podcast. Here, myself, Ty DeCordova, and co-host Casey Mabry. We are here live at Coors Field in Denver, Colorado with Mr. Dick Monfort. And thank you, sir, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come visit with us today on the podcast. We've known the name a long time, known the heritage of the family a long time, and it's just great to get here to sit and visit with you and learn more about it and get to hear some of the stories. And me and Casey, when we found out we was going to be able to do this, we've been kind of pretty giddy about it because it's neat to interview the guys like yourself that have such knowledge of the industry, such knowledge of the business and now you're in a different industry, different business, but you got the growing up in the background of the cattle industry, of the beef cattle industry, and we just kind of want to sit here and pick your brains. And me and Casey do a lot with our kids. We do like to start out talking about the kids. They're getting ready to show, or we got Fort Worth Livestock Show coming up here in the next couple of weeks, and you got some hogs going, Casey. We got some steers going. So has barn been busy?
Yeah, I mean we're rolling right through it. I mean we're right at the beginning of the season here, but girls have been working really, really hard, and hopefully they get to hang a few banners this year. We'll see.
It'll be fun, won't it? So let's kind of get right into your youth and your background of where you grew up, how the family's been in the industry, the beef industry, for a long time, and kind of what that looked like. And we'll just kind of let you talk and we'll listen.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. Yeah, I was born in the beef industry, and my grandfather ran the feedlot, and that's all it was a feedlot. The head count I remember, which was probably early 60s, was, around 20,000 head. Probably was smaller than that, but everything gets inflated over time. So my grandfather had horrible arthritis, and my grandmother was sick, and so I would spend the night with my grandfather when I was really young. If you think about it, there were no cell phones, there were party lines, stuff like that, and they worried that he'd get flipped over or something. So every morning he'd get me up, he'd feed me something, not much, and then we'd go out and I would ride the pens with him. And so I started real young. I was on a horse when I was 4 years old. Told my wife that I rode when I was 4. I actually told her I rode when I was 6 years old because I didn't figure she'd believe the 4. So we're cleaning out my house one time, and she comes across this picture, and sure shit, I was 4. So there's proof of it. But yeah, so, and, I learned the business from that standpoint and went all the way up. I worked in the beef industry till 95. My last gig was as the president of ConAgra Red Meats. We killed about 100,000 cattle a week, which is a ton of meat. Our margins were really shitty. But it was, I learned everything. I worked in the plant. I ran a plant. I was the head buyer. I was a feeder cattle buyer during college. I was awful at it, and they decided I needed to find some other job. But yeah, so I've been involved for a long time.
You said earlier about your grandfather he was a farmer. Is that correct? Corn farmer.
Yes, he was. Yes.
And then he was feeding it to chickens?
The story goes, of course, I wasn't around, that he fed chickens, and he figured out that took a hell of a lot less cattle to feed his corn than chickens. If you go back then, people, it was all value add, right? Farmers would, in the Midwest, there were big elevators and stuff like that where you could ship it from. But, in Colorado, there was, you fed it and you put it into cattle or chickens or hogs or whatever, and then you sold the livestock. And that's what he chose to do.
Yeah, so we're talking about that time period, what then, and you got to think about the Front Range of Colorado where you guys were. Obviously, there was some areas in there where you could irrigate out of the rivers or canals, and you guys were able to feed cattle,
Right.
and probably one of the first ones in the country to do that, or at least out in this region. And then you guys would do what with the cattle? Then you'd ship them where?
Yeah, well, to hit on one of your points, the story goes that he was the first person that fed cattle all year round. And the climate in Colorado was sort of okay to do that. And, he had noticed the cycles that when all the cattle, the calves, and, the different cycles of when all the cattle got fat, that the market got depressed and then it would go up. And so he figured out a way to where he would feed cattle 360 days. And I'm told he was the first one. And then what we'd do is we'd fatten them. And then the best I know, they would go to either Denver, had a stockyards where you could sell them, or they'd go to Omaha or Chicago. I don't know why you'd ever go to Chicago, but I'm guessing there was some rationale behind it.
Oh, it's because a guy in Omaha didn't bid him enough, and so he wanted to go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's probably right. So that's the way we marketed them. And my dad, so I had an uncle who I never met who died in the war, and he was the heir apparent to taking over from my grandfather. My dad was in college at CSU, and he was a journalism major when that happened, when he died in the war. And so he got pressed back into action. And my sense is that my grandfather and my uncle, whose name is also Dick, had a lot better relationship than Kenny and Warren. And so there was some different strategies along the way, but Kenny figured out that shipping 1,000-pound live animal to one of these stockyards and then them shipping it to some slaughterhouse, that was inefficient as hell. Why not build a plant right there in Greeley, and now you're going to ship a 600-pound carcass rather than a 1,000-pound animal? And that was his theory. They about went broke. In fact, their partners quit them. But, they kept going. So that plant was built early 60s. It's still where the plant is today. So that's 60 some years later. It's still there. It's grown quite a bit. But
what was the original kill at that plant?
Oh God, I don't know that I've ever been told. I know that it's about 5,000 a day now.
No, yeah, it's amazing to see how they've progressed into these monsters that they are. But so then you guys would have been shipping carcasses to the East Coast, probably predominantly.
Mm-hmm.
And then about not very short after that, the industry started to morph into box beef sales.
Right.
And you guys are probably one of the first ones to do that.
Yeah, we think we were the first. And box beef sales then was, you took the chuck and put it in a box, you took the rib, put it in a box, you took the loin, you put it in a box, and you put the round. So you had 4 boxes and you shipped them. When I left in 95, I think there was, I may not even remember this right, like 15 boxes or 16 boxes per animal. So they just kept cutting them down and down. But yeah, it changed. I mean, not being in the plant when they just shipped carcasses, I really couldn't tell you what that looked like. I did when I was 13 years old. I did work as a scheduler for the box beef. So I got around the plant a little bit then. I got a good story. I was working at the feedlot, and this was when I was 12 or 13 years old. And I was seriously doing the same type of job that anybody would be doing. I was going in, checking a pen of cattle. I was moving the cattle. When we dipped them, I would work in the deal. And one time, and I was 12, I was stupid. I was, had no fear. And so I'm chasing some cattle into the dipping vat, and I got everything so screwed up, and I got cattle turning on me all sorts of different ways and breaking shit down. And this guy comes up to me and he says, Dick, having you around is like having two good hired men gone. And that's always stuck with me. And unfortunately, I think he was correct.
Have you ever used that on anybody?
Oh, I use it all the. No, I haven't used it on anybody else, but I tell them that about me.
Yeah. So then you go to school?
I went to University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, so I didn't get too far away from home. We lived out by the feedlot, and I went to a school. My sister and I went to a school that had 3 classrooms, 9 grades, 3 teachers, and 39 students. So we went to this school there, and the principal died. And so one of the teachers is gone. Well, his wife was one of the teachers. So she retired. So they bussed us up to Eaton. So I went to school in a real small town. Eaton's just 4 miles north of where the plant and where we lived. And and then my parents got divorced and I moved to Greeley. So I went to Greeley West and then I went to UNC.
So then your intent was to come home and get back into the business. And
yeah, I mean, I tell college students all the time that, first of all, I was going to college. Nobody ever, it's not as if I was going anywhere other than college. I was going to have to go to college. Second of all, I knew what I was going to do. I was going to work for the company. What I was going to do, I didn't know. At the time, I was buying cattle, and so I did that for all of my college years, and then for a couple of years after that.
So you were going to class, and then they would send you out in the country to buy cattle?
Well, back then, I just went to the auctions. So I would go, and they thought it was sort of cute to have a college kid drive up to Scotts Bluff on Saturday morning and be there at 9:00. Take a 3-hour drive. So I think they felt like it'd keep me sort of calm the night before. It didn't, but I would go to like Scotts Bluff on Saturdays. There were times maybe on Friday I might go to Brush. We had a few cattle buyers, so they just sort of sent me wherever. But I didn't buy many cattle in the country.
So were y'all mostly slaughtering what you were raising?
That was a feedlot. Yeah, about that time, we were probably slaughtering 2 to 3 times whatever. We probably were slaughtering 700 maybe of our own, and maybe 2,000 total. It was one shift, so
okay.
Yeah, but we had to, and I bought some fats also during my college years. I had a couple customers, so I'd go buy some fat. I was no better at fats than I was at feeders. You know what? I bought fat feeders and I bought skinny
fat cattle.
Yeah, I mean, it would just, I had everything ass backwards.
Yeah, so my first territory when I worked for Cargill would have been in Torrington and Scottsbluff.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Weatherford, Texas.
Yeah.
And then they stuck me in that area up there, and it felt like I was on the edge of the earth. You know? So what's cool is that area is still full of a lot of the same people.
Now, did you buy cattle for Fort Morgan?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So when y'all at the peak of the cattle feeding, how many cattle did y'all feed?
When we sold to ConAgra, we had just built the Yuma lot. And we had Cuner, Gilchrist, and Yuma, and they all fed about 100,000. Yuma a little bit more than that. Yuma was an interesting one because my dad he went to Yuma. He studied things. He was very strategic, and he went to Yuma because of the corn, the price of corn, but land was cheap. And so I don't know back then how many head per animal they'd build those pens or per bunk size or whatever, but he like tripled it. So these pens were massive pens, 1,200 head per pen. And, it was supposed to help in the winter and stuff like that. Later, not us, but when other people took it over, they made those pens much smaller. It was really hard to check the cattle, to move them, and it was hard to put 1,200 head together at a time. So, but Yuma was a very interesting feedlot. It was, it's interesting the way they built that.
I worked at Gilchrist for a summer.
Oh, did you?
Bill Martin's kind of like a second dad
Yes.
to me, and I
Yep.
come live with Bill for a little while, and
Yeah.
him and my dad were really, really good friends, and I lived there. I worked there for a summer. It was pretty neat.
When I was 14 or 15, my summer job was driving a feedlot at Gilchrist. And they used to have this overpass. I don't know if when you were there. So they had the drover's alley where the cattle came in, where the new cattle came in. They had a drover's alley, and it went underneath the road so that you would never have to stop the feed trucks. And so it was a big windy turn. And driving a feed truck is no fun.
No.
There's no radio. There was no power steering. It was a pain. And so there was a couple of us that, we'd see who could deliver the most loads of feed in a day. And so we drove hard. And I'm coming off that bypass one time, and the sun just hit me right in the eye. And I probably was screwing around a little bit, I'm guessing. And next thing I know, there's another feed truck right in front of me, and he and I go like this. And it wasn't bad. I mean, we when I say we're going fast, 40 miles an hour maybe, right? And by the time I saw him, I probably slowed it down quite a bit, and he was scared to death. But it was funny because Leroy Johnson was the manager then, and Leroy had sort of designed the feedlot. And Leroy took me to the site, and he chewed my butt like you can't believe. I've never had a man ever before or after yell at me like that. And so anyway, I go home, and I'm saying, okay, here's the next one coming. Leroy never told my dad a bit about it. So I thought, you know what? I learned from that, He was my boss. He's the one that had to take care of it. He sure as hell did. And that was that.
Yeah, so you've seen this thing. I mean, it's there's probably not very many people that have had the experience, because at your age where the industry really started to transform,
right,
and go from the swinging beef to the box beef,
right,
and then morph through there. So you've obviously done a lot of good things right. I know you like to pick on yourself, but
right.
As you transitioned, running these beef businesses, can you talk a little bit about the ConAgra transition and whenever that happened, and what that was like for you, and what your role was?
So in 1980, I was I guess it was 1980. They sent me out to Grand Island to run the cattle buy. And this, we had the plant in Greeley. It was going to go on strike. That's why my dad bought the Grand Island plant. And we put a fab on it and some more coolers and this and that. So he sent me out there, and I was going to head the buy. And then we hired the guy from Swift, whose plant it was. He was the slaughter manager, and then the fab manager was a guy I think we got from Cargill. And so we're running, and it's startup and 2 shifts. So you're not only starting up the beginning, and then you're starting up the second shift. But it was tough. We're losing money. And the buy did not take very long, especially the startup. You buy a pin of cattle and you're almost through the week. And so I got busy and I would go down to the grading chain or the kill floor, or fill in wherever, go to the fab floor. So anyway, we got to a point where we're losing money. We had this DES Stabestrol. Do you remember that? It was a supplement or a steroid, yeah, an implant, and they had, for whatever, they viewed it illegal at one point in time. Well, nobody other than us had to destroy the livers because they were selling them to other packers. It was stupid. But anyway, so we got 20,000 cattle that we had to destroy the livers, which is like $6 a head. And it was just this and that. We had a tornado in Grand Island. The market was bad, all sorts of stuff. So, we were near bankruptcy and people at the plant were fighting. And so my dad comes up with this idea that I'm going to be the plant manager. And so at ripe age of 26 years old, running something I've never run before, I became the plant manager. And so, but from 1980 to 87, we killed it. We just got really good. I remember somebody telling me how poor our product was and how we were easily the worst packer in the world, which, I'm afraid to say he was right. And so we had a lot of young guys there that didn't want to be the worst, and we killed it and did great. And, I remember, I don't know when you got out of the business, but our kill and fab cost was less than $70. And today, it's $300.
At least.
Yeah. So we were really good, really efficient. We had good cattle out there. We had great people. And so we did really well. And we were literally bankrupt in 80. So in 87, ConAgra came to us, and my dad and I met with them. And it was weird. My dad sort of told him what the price was. And Mike Harper, who was the chairman of ConAgra, said, "How in the world did you come up with that?" So he took out ConAgra's annual report and says, "This is your returns. This is this is that. That's the price. I just put it all figured out, and that's the price." And so we literally closed that thing in about a month. And so from there on, we were part of ConAgra. At the same time, Harper bought, with us telling him not to do it, bought Swift, which was run by a guy by the name of Eddie Cox Jr., and bought them for about a third of the price of us, and they were about the same size, but they had pigs. So we took over the whole deal in 87, doubled our size. Now we had pigs, which I knew nothing about. So, and then I was there for 8 or 9 years.
So now we're going to start transitioning in a little bit what modern day is for you. So how did you get into Major League Baseball?
So in 92, 93, the Rockies won a franchise, they got selected to do a franchise, and the price tag was $95 million. And so they had some guys from Columbus, Ohio, that were going to be the ringleaders. And so those guys were going to be the general partners. They were the ones approved by baseball, but they had to have a group of people to raise 75 of the 95 million. Jerry McMorris, who was a friend of my father's and in the trucking business, came to my dad, said, "Would you like to invest?" My dad said, "No." He said, "Do you mind if I talk to your kids?" And he says, "No, but I wouldn't waste much time with Dick. He'll say no. Charlie, who knows?" So Charlie invested. And then Jerry and some of the guys got in financial trouble. And so I had just left ConAgra, so I sort of picked up some of the pieces.
So what, I mean, it's just amazing to me so I bought cattle,
Right.
to watch how you transition into where you're at now. You still stay pretty close to the cattle industry?
A little bit. For many years in 95, Rick Montera, who, was the head buyer at Monfort. When I left, he left. Rick was my brother-in-law. And so there was a guy named Dallas Horton. Everybody know him. Dallas was a big cattle feeder. And he had feedlots, he had schemes, he had all sorts of stuff, but he needed head count. And so Rick and I decided, we'll feed some cattle. We made sure when we left there wasn't a non-compete. It was easy because they wanted more people to feed cattle. And so we started feeding cattle with Dallas, and we did that for 15, 20 years. So, over those 95 to 2015, we were still buying and selling cattle.
So now your day-to-day deal is just you run the Rockies now? Is it?
Yeah, they've sort of set me to the side. My son is the president now, but yeah, I'm still involved.
That's pretty neat.
So what's the most I mean, I'm guessing the things that you did in the feedlot and the packing plant and running that, what's tougher, running this or running a packing plant?
I would have said running a plant. First of all, our margins were super low back then, like 1-2%, which is crazy. The amount of capital, the amount of employees it takes, the risk you take, and all that. So it's crazy that our margins were that low, but I loved it. I loved every bit of it. I loved the work. There was always work. It was hard work. It was, in baseball, I often wonder, all our revenue comes from paying fans that are watching a sport, right? And I came from a business that helped feed the world. And I always felt like this is sort of cheating, the baseball part of it. But baseball's tough. But I love the beef business. I love the cattle feeding business. It got tough and it's weird. We still have a ranch it's actually in California, but it's like 20 minutes out of Reno. And, we just sold our cattle for $3,200 a head.
It's amazing.
Come August. Yeah, it is crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's a different industry, different world now.
It really is.
Well, Dick, I don't know what else we need to cover. You got any other stories you want to tell?
No, I got lots of stories, but yeah, probably not noteworthy. So I will tell you one thing we did, and I wish if I would have stayed, I'd have got it done forever. But it was very complicated, was the hot fat trim. And I had a belief that, when I left, everybody was buying 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch or whatever. And it's amazing that we kill these cattle. We use all these BTUs to chill down the fat. And then we have these people struggle to get this cold fat off the animal and not do that great a job. And cattle feeders get paid whether they're too fat or not fat enough. And the hot fat trim that we started could have revolutionized things. And but when I left, the problem was you always had a piece of meat that you had to sell at regular price. I wish they'd have stayed with it. I think it was it was my idea, so I think it's one of the greatest ideas.
I think if you go into a plant and a bunch of them today, they're definitely pulling the kidney knob out.
Yeah.
After the hot scale, right before he goes into in the hot box, they're streamlining a lot of the carcasses from a hot fat trimming standpoint now. One of the big deals is the value of the fat.
Yeah.
And if you think about beef demand when you were doing it,
yeah,
and it was let's say you're probably grading and sorting half the cattle? I mean, you're 50-50 choice and select.
We were more than that, especially in Grand Island.
Today, the industry's grading like 87.
Yeah.
We're feeding cattle. What used to sell 1,000-pound steer,
1,500.
yeah, now they're huge.
Yeah.
So, and these cattle have gotten way fat.
That's a credit to the cattle feeder, really.
Absolutely.
And the cattle that do the best in the feedlot are the ones that also do the best in the plant. Now, maybe not grade wise, but so it was easy for the cattle industry to take us. I was telling you about my dad's split ear that won some champion deal. It was a Hereford, and just looking at him, he's a yield grade 5. He might even be more than that. And, today the cattle that you see coming through this auction and stuff like that, the amount of black cattle is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're talking about the bigness and the genetics and the high grading and the high choice prime select scale now is 85 or better. Yeah, a good feeder, but also you got to back up the genetics to it. I mean, these guys these genetics guys and these ranchers that have really went out there and honed their cow herds and their bull batteries. I mean, it's the whole industry got together and said we want to do a better job,
and they have.
Yeah.
And I always figured a Holstein Angus cross would be a good one, and right now he is a good one.
Oh,
right?
Isn't that amazing?
They
said they think 18 to 19% of the cattle on feed right now are
right.
Angus.
And there's
Holstein
again,
crosses.
you can genetically make these Holsteins boys, right? And every once in a while you'd buy a Holstein Angus cross. Somehow the cow got out with whatever happened, and they always were. You just could envision that that's the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it's taken some of the fat off the carcasses, scaled them up a bit, and kind of made them absolutely great. But man, I appreciate you getting on here with us.
Yeah.
Ty and I are extremely humbled that what's cool is we're sitting here at your stadium. We had the sale here last year. The National Western's going on, and it's great to be able to tie all that back together. With you guys owning the Rockies, and really this area has changed. If you think about when you were at Eaton and it was 4 kids in a grade, there's 1 million people that live in that area now. To watch what the Front Range has done and what your family did is pioneered through that area and where the industry's transitioned.
Well, it's fun to talk about this. It really is. So I'm glad to have done it, and I'm going to stop by your auction tomorrow and.
Maybe we can buy another
you
to a cattle.
Yeah, maybe.
You and Rick show up. We got a buyer number for you.
Yeah.
So.
The only way I was going to ever get Rick out of buying cattle was if we sold those feedlots. So thank God. I mean, we used to feed 25,000. At $3,000 a head, I think we'd probably be down about 2,000 heads. So
yeah, I met Rick when I was probably 25, 26 years old. So like 18, 19 years ago. In Torrington, because he used to come to Torrington every week.
Yeah. He was Rick's probably one of my best friends in the world, and he's doing a lot of roping now. And
I was gonna say we'd go out there and rope when I come up here and was living with Bill, we'd go out. Rick.
Yeah, he was good buddies with Billy. Yeah.
I try to get Billy to come up tomorrow, but I don't. You can't pull it prime out of that cell barn down there.
Yeah, that's good.
Dick, we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Good luck, and I appreciate it, and it's been fun talking to you.
Likewise. Yes, sir.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in here on the We Live It podcast. Once again, don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button, and as always, God bless.